Well, last time we have talked on the way the Italian states had actually, well, expanded the trade networks to the whole Europe, and in Europe, different cities have become, increasingly, different cities become more and more, uh, well, um, trade centers that are part of this trade network and benefiting from this trade network. And as a result, this state's effects, their influence is kind of the um, well uh, penetrate deeper, more, and also the number of them grew. So in a way, this different dots, these different places. Previously, as I said, the empires were controlling relatively small number of centers. Now, the number of centers that were part of this um, world economy get larger. So, which means, of course, especially when the major trade centers where major products are produced, some industrial products are produced, are more have expanded. Well, certain raw materials especially will demand it more, basically, because the overall as trade expand, the production level expands, and demand in different centers which have and note that the number of those centers are increasing has also expanded. But European trade system was pretty much squeezed to the Europe itself, so it needs places where it can get the raw materials, and it can also increase the capital. After a certain point, if there are no new places to which the trade can expand, the merchants can go and um, establish new connections which help them to expand their overall buying power in the world economic system. In that case, basically, the trade centers or the merchants might basically compete with each other, and that competition itself might basically harmful for the world economic system. So the capital that was controlling the world economic system needed expansion, both to provide raw materials to the centers, to the trade centers within the West Europe, but also because of lack of those raw materials. The potential of expansion, deeper penetration to the Western Europe was more or less limited. Basically, the rural area of the Europe was only meeting a certain level of raw materials that was needed for the world economic system built by the European city-states. So in the end, this need to expand the capital was met with another state, basically a state this time, which was continuously expanded up to that point. Basically, it was a religious crusade which was driving Muslims away from the country, and that expansion, centuries-long expansion, give that state also taste to continue that expansion in a different area. That state was Spain, and Spain connected has actually organized and financed a Venetian merchant, Christopher Columbus, who is a Venetian, to find new trade networks which hopefully will make Spain rich, but which will also hopefully allow Spain to get enough money, let's say, resources to continue its quest to expand, maybe get more power in Europe or maybe in Africa to get other Muslim states. In the end, actually, Christopher Columbus had done something even better. It has found a continent where there were very weak empires which had very rich resources, Inca and Aztec Empire. So the expansion of Spain could continue in the continent. And as you see here, Spain was able to conquer a vast area compared with its own motherland. And by the way, with this power, Spain can also actually, through certain unions and basically through some conquest also, was able to get control of a very large area in the Europe also. But Spain pretty much looked to its new empire as an empire which was basically providing resources that were extracted by an administrative center. So basically, it extracted gold and silver from these new places. But the state of Spain was not that much interested in providing trade networks between Spain and this new world, this new continent, and much less to make certain cities of Spain major trade centers which connect this new world and Europe and maybe the different European trade centers themselves. As a result, this function, this role of building the trade networks between New World and Spain was first, to some extent, tried. The Italian city-states were trying to organize this. To some extent, they were continuing at least maintain the trade network in the Mediterranean, where the Spain, with its extracted resources, is connected to the rest of the European trade system. But at some point, the resources that were brought were too much, and basically the ability of Italian city-states to organize this trade was more limited at some point. So a special province of Spain, Netherlands, has started to make this organization. Netherlands was not Spain. It was controlled by Spain, but it was a different place. And at some point, this Netherlands, the cities of Netherlands, provinces of Netherlands, they started to demand, while they were organizing this trade, Spain wanted more from this area. See this area more as an area to extract resources and where basically it can impose its rules. While these states wanted more to be independent, at least autonomous in their, let's say, effort to organize trade. And in the end, basically, this created one of the main, let's say, polarizations or problems in the Europe of 16th and 17th century. And in addition to that, Spain, once it has those resources, it also wanted to use these resources to combine the whole world economy, the whole Western Europe, into a single world empire. Certain independent units, the Netherlands, which was part of province, which was a province but also wanted independence, certain autonomous units, also certain units in the Italy, in the Germany, certain kingdoms, and two major states, England and France, which were right now not as powerful as Spain to try to build their own land empires, but they were also not that as powerful enough to basically control. They also did not have the ability to control the trade networks because they could not organize the trade. They didn't have this organized centers where merchants can control the trade networks. But they still resisted to the Spain. And Netherlands kind of was also, using its wealth, was able to organize or let's say finance different states that were fighting with Spain. And in the end, actually, it was not the only Netherlands which actually defeated the Spain. The other countries' armies had actually even more significant role. But Netherlands kind of leadership in providing this wealth and resources was still significant. And Spain's attempt to turn the world economy into a world empire failed. In a way, I mean, these attempts continue later at certain critical points of the world economy. I mean, France in Napoleon's era tried to build a world empire. Hitler in Germany was trying to build a world empire, and to some extent, maybe some people argue today's United States was also aiming to build a. I mean, at least certain groups in the United States also want to turn economic system a world empire. So, in some sense, world economic systems are always tend to turn to a world empire, where hegemony at some point might grow at some other core states to itself and become too very powerful, and in that it might organize whole, let's say, it might organize whole production, whole economic activity in its boundaries. I mean, of course, except the independent areas, the areas that it controlled, in a redistributive manner. So trade might become at that point a secondary activity. But as we talked about, Spain tried it and failed. And the system has remained as a world economy, and Netherlands, Dutch, became the dominant or the hegemonic power of this world economy. What happened at this point to the places like Africa, China, East Asia, Middle East, and India? Well, those places were connected to the trade network of the West Europe at that time. However, the China, East Asia, I mean China, it was basically controlling East Asia, not only by the empire itself, but also the client states, which were formally independent, but still kind of were subservient to the China at the time. And Middle East and India was organized in three major empires: I mean, Ottoman Empire, Persian Empire, and the Mughal Empire. To some extent, Russian Empire was also mentioned, like among these ones. All these five powers, they become independent than the European world economy. They had connections basically with the European world economy, and merchants also getting certain products as luxury products from these empires and into the European economy, and also getting some capital from it, but and getting some resources, certain things from the Europe to these centers. Although China famously did not like any European products, so it was basically all Chinese products were basically bought by gold. So it becomes sink place of European gold, according to one definition. But in other places, certain European products were bought, and in China maybe also some products were bought. But still, these places were maintained their independence. So they become independent world empires by themselves. Africa contained several, basically it contains several mini systems before, but European trade networks were connected to the Africa at certain centers, and they started to trade from these mini systems certain African products that were demanded in Europe. And at certain places, small states start to be organized to control this trade between the mini systems and the European powers. But at this time, these small states were also independent from the European system, kind of. What happened at 17th century and 18th century? This system started to enter into a crisis. We will talk more on this in the next part.